Joe Rogan Podcast, check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Joe Rogan's podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience, has quickly become a powerhouse in the media world, with over 11 million downloads per episode. To put that into perspective, traditional news outlets like CNN often struggle to keep their viewership above 450,000. That's a huge gap, and it's one of the reasons Rogan's show has had such a massive impact. His ability to bypass mainstream media and go straight to the audience with raw, unfiltered conversations has completely reshaped how people consume content. But this success hasn't come without controversy. Let's dive into how Joe Rogan has managed to shake up the mainstream media, and why that's caused such a stir. It all started with Joe Rogan's frustration with how mainstream media often misrepresented important stories. One of the key incidents that led him to criticize traditional outlets was when they misrepresented Dr. Robert Malone, a vaccine skeptic. Rogan noticed that these critical voices were being silenced or ignored by news networks, so he decided to give them a platform on his own podcast. This move was controversial, but also eye-opening. It showed that there was an audience hungry for alternative viewpoints that the mainstream media wasn't offering. As Rogan's podcast grew in popularity, it had a ripple effect, inspiring other creators to start their own podcasts. The Joe Rogan Experience proved that long-form, unfiltered conversations were in demand, and suddenly everyone wanted to get in on the action. But while Rogan's rise sparked a podcast revolution, it also invited scrutiny for some of the more controversial guests and views he allowed on his show. Take, for example, some of the guests Rogan has brought on, figures like Alex Jones, a conspiracy theorist, and Milo Yiannopoulos, known for his far-right views. These appearances sparked outrage, with critics accusing Rogan of giving a platform to dangerous ideas. But Rogan defended his choice, arguing that the point of his podcast was to engage in open discussions, even if those discussions were uncomfortable or controversial. And then, of course, there was the infamous appearance by Donald Trump, which took things to another level. When Trump sat down with Rogan for a 2.5-hour interview, it was unlike anything you'd see in a traditional political interview. The two discussed everything from the economy to leadership to the state of politics in America. This wasn't the usual political soundbites we're used to seeing on mainstream news. Rogan's style of questioning, casual and open-ended, resonated with Trump supporters, especially male voters who felt they were being ignored by the mainstream media. But the interview also received backlash from critics who felt Rogan was giving Trump a free pass and didn't hold him accountable for his actions. Rogan's ability to draw in high-profile guests and spark heated debates didn't just stop at politics. He also played a huge role in popularizing mixed martial arts, MMA. As a UFC commentator, Rogan helped bring the sport to mainstream audiences. His passion for MMA, combined with his vast knowledge of the fighters and the sport's history, made him a key figure in making MMA more popular than ever before. But not all of Rogan's influence has been positive in the eyes of everyone. He's faced backlash over his comments on COVID-19, where he questioned the effectiveness of vaccines and promoted treatments like ivermectin. Many critics argue that by giving a platform to vaccine skeptics and alternative health experts, Rogan was contributing to public confusion during a global health crisis. His critics accused him of spreading misinformation, while his supporters defended his right to discuss these issues freely. Then there was the incident that shook things up even further. A video compilation surfaced showing Rogan using racial slurs in past podcasts. This led to a wave of backlash, with some calling for Spotify to cancel his show altogether. In response, Rogan apologized, but the controversy still lingered. Despite this, Spotify stuck by him, although the platform did face intense scrutiny for continuing their partnership with him. This situation raised questions about the responsibility of streaming platforms when it comes to moderating content. But here's the thing. Through all of this, Rogan's popularity hasn't diminished. In fact, it's only grown. Despite the criticism, more public figures have come on the show, eager to tap into Rogan's massive audience. However, some celebrities and experts have opted out, fearing the backlash from being associated with Rogan's more controversial guests. The risk of being linked to someone like Alex Jones or Milo Yiannopoulos is too great for some, which has led to a split between mainstream celebrities and those willing to take the plunge into Rogan's world. Speaking of controversial figures, Rogan has faced significant backlash for some of the guests he's chosen to feature. In addition to Jones and Yiannopoulos, Dr. Robert Malone and Gavin McInnes, two highly controversial figures, have appeared on his show, sparking heated debates over the responsibility of podcast hosts in moderating their content. Critics argue that Rogan gives too much airtime to individuals with extreme and sometimes harmful views. But Rogan justifies his decisions, saying that his goal is to engage in free conversation, even if it's with people who might not align with mainstream thinking. Then there's the issue of vaccines. Rogan's comments on vaccines, especially his skepticism towards them, have created a divide among his audience. Some listeners agree with his stance, while others worry that his influence could harm public health efforts. His critics argue that by questioning vaccine safety and promoting unproven treatments, Rogan is contributing to misinformation. But for Rogan, it's all about giving people the chance to hear different perspectives and make up their own minds. So, what impact has all of this had on Rogan's reputation? It's clear that his podcast has both supporters and detractors. Some people love the raw, unfiltered nature of the Joe Rogan Experience, while others believe he's giving a platform to harmful ideas. One thing's for sure, Joe Rogan has undeniably changed the way we consume media, disrupting the traditional news cycle and creating a new space for long-form, thought-provoking conversations. Whether you agree with him or not, you can't deny that Rogan has forever altered the media landscape. And as his podcast continues to grow, the debates over his guests, views, and influence are far from over.